Gino, I'm going to try this right now. Magnanimity. I
Good.
think I got on the
that?
first one, right?
Yes,
Magnanimity.
you did.
Hello, everybody. This is Jake Stenziano, host of the Wheelbarrow Props Podcast, here with my co-host, the multifamily mentor, the coach, the chef, the father of six, the best-selling author, the G-Daddy. Gino Barber. Gino, how's it going?
Mr. Stenziano, it's a good day in paradise down here. I'm just living the dream. How you doing?
Tell me about that money mix you had this weekend.
Oh, I flew into Nashville for the day. Got to make it happen. I brought my son, who's 17 years old. We had a bus tour with 50 students, went to 2 properties. I should have stayed overnight, but you know what? Wanted to run home to get home to the family, but I still should have stayed overnight. The students were awesome. They actually walked into apartments. They were seeing how apartments were turned. They were talking to 2 operators, all the deficiencies in the property, the great things of the property, how you turn it, how you speak to tenants. They were talking to the management of the property. It was really, I think, an immersion. And then at nighttime, it's all about networking. So they met each other, people with money, people with deals. It was great. I had an awesome time in Nashville. It's a great city. It's an amazing city.
And there's a great focus on people, systems, and culture. So I think it was a fantastic weekend, but we have an even more fantastic guest today. Today's guest is Rick Sapio. Rick is a lifelong entrepreneur who's founded more than 20 companies. He learned early in life that it's best to think positively about the cards one's been dealt, no matter how difficult those cards appear. His life purpose is to inspire entrepreneurship, which led Rick to start the Business Finishing School. So without further ado, Rick, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I really appreciate you being here. Please share with us your story and how you got started in business at 13 years old.
I will, but I just want to show you something I got in the mail yesterday. Look at this. Family, food, and the Friars. This is awesome.
Thank you.
I wrote down here before I started, because I'm in the restaurant business too. Your story, Gino, should be called From Real Food to Real Wealth, because you can't really make money running your own restaurant unless you own a chain. Real food to real wealth. I love it. So, my story is interesting, and what I tell it, sometimes people feel sorry for me, but that's not what the reason I'm telling the story is for. It's to get people motivated that you can overcome anything. And my family doesn't like me to tell the real story because it's painful, but
no family does.
My siblings, I was the 7th of 10. And when I was a baby, my 4-year-old brother, I mean, we could all imagine what a 4-year-old is like. They're the light of the family, and mommy's little, prince. And unfortunately and sadly, my 4-year-old brother died when I was a baby. And my mother had a massive nervous breakdown, and she never recovered. And I could look the audience in the eye and say, I never in my life had a sane conversation with my mother. And so it was really sad. She was in and out of mental institutions, and she had really severe bipolar, among other things. But the story gets more interesting. When I was 11, my dad came home from work, and he was a small-time entrepreneur. And, I loved my dad. He was my hero. But he struggled financially trying to, feed all those kids. But when I was 11, he came home and he announced to the whole family that he had incurable cancer. And they gave him 6 weeks to live on the first hospital visit. So, it's like, holy cow, we're in North Jersey, New Jersey. I see New York City. It was a crazy time, 1975. Lots going on between, gangs, mafia, really horrible economy, all that. And then to know your dad's dying. So he ended up living 2.5 years, not 6 weeks. And during that time, he said, look, this is how you want to be a man. You want to stay away from these kind of people, and you want to be with these kind of people. He taught me a lot about business. And he introduced me to a mentor, a guy named James O'Donnell, who changed the trajectory of my life when I was 11. And this guy said to me, what are you going to do with your life? And I said, I don't know. And he said, let me show you what I've built. And the guy showed me his office. I couldn't believe this massive building. It said O'Donnell Engineering on it. And there was, rooms of draftsmen. I don't know if it's legal to say draftsmen anymore, draftspeople. And he said, listen, Rick, if you get an engineering degree, you could become a doctor, a lawyer, you could work on Wall Street, you could be a business person, you could do whatever you want. And so from 11 years old on, anytime someone asked me, what are you going to do with your life? I would say, I don't know, but I'm going to get an engineering degree because I could be a doctor, a lawyer, I could work on Wall Street because it's going to train my brain. And I'm going to wrap the story with this because I want to hear your questions. But um, all of us have mentors around us, but we have to be open to hearing the message. And I heard that message, and I'll never forget this incident. It's seared into my brain. Our house was incredibly chaotic. You could imagine no parents. Um, I had 6 older siblings, 5 older siblings because one passed. A lot of chaos. And there was I'll never forget, I saw a pile of mail on the table where mail sometimes went, and it had my name on it. And I look at this envelope, I'm like, holy shit, I never got, I don't remember ever getting a piece of mail to me. And it was handwritten on the envelope too, which was kind of interesting. Anyway, I opened the envelope, and it was from Rutgers University, and it said, "Dear Mr. Sapio, you are one of 10 recipients of a." I'm getting kind of emotional telling the story. One of 10 recipients of a scholarship to Rutgers Engineering School, and I got it because of my score on the SAT math. And so I was it was like, holy shit! It was like getting $1 billion lottery ticket. And so I'll never forget, I showed it to my mother. I handed her the letter, and she reads it, and she rips it up. And she said, "You're not going to college. I need somebody to bring food home." And I was like, holy cow. And so literally, I just ran away from home and went to school, and really cut ties with my family for the most part for the next 5 years. It was a 5-year program. But that whole story, what's wrapped into it is, when you grow up chaotic like I have, I look for systems and patterns in life and in business and in families. And it's led me to this journey of just finding patterns. And we're going to talk about some of those. But one of the things I just want to show you is, when I am married late in life, I'm 55, I've got 4 little kids. And when my wife got pregnant, I'm not sure how that happened, but I was 44. And I said, honey, this is really scary for me because I don't know if I'm going to live. My dad died at 49. A lot of family members died. So I want to make sure that our family knows what we stand for in case I die. And so we created one of the words I want to talk to you guys about today is permanence. And permanence is missing in society. It's creating permanent things. So my wife and I sat down and created this. It's permanent. And basically it's our family placemat. It sits on our dining room table. Every time we eat, our kids see it. It's got our family values, our family crest, our wedding vows down here. It's got Ben Franklin's 13 virtues. It's got our family rules, how we do our meetings, what our values are. And every single day, it's never changed. My kid's about to turn 12, my oldest, and my youngest is 5. We talk about this every single day at dinner. So that chaotic childhood led to a lot of really cool permanent things. And before we got on the air here, I told you I've been in the same office for 26 years. Now you know why.
So Rick, how did you do that? I mean, usually people who grow up chaotic like chaotic and they want chaotic. How did you go the other route? Because it's somebody who grows up poor. They just assume, hey, that's the mindset. I mean, very few people say, I want to be rich and show everybody. How did you want to, I guess, strive to that? Because I have a lot of friends who love chaos. They wait to the last minute to get a job done, and it's the same pattern over again. And that leads, I mean, you're just not the same person you should be. You could, people have so much potential and they don't do that. How did you get away from that chaotic life?
Two quick stories. So one is, I'll never forget, I was 13. My dad had literally was on his last leg. And in my neighborhood, there was a lot of mafiosos that drove nice cars. And it's hard to even imagine what it was like back then. I'm sure you guys can. But, we looked up to these guys. And my best friend, his name is Pat. What they would do is they would take young kids and say, hey, I'll give you $20 if you take this package across town on your bike, luring you in. And then, they would ask you to do more complex things. And I didn't really have parents. I was out, on the street. And so my dad heard that I had done one of these deliveries. It was probably the last thing that he ever did that really seared in my memory. He heard about it and he literally attacked me. And he said, if I ever hear that you do anything like that again, I will kill you. That's what he said. It scared the living daylights out of me. I almost was scared straight. And I don't tell that story too often, but that's one thing. Another story that happened, which answers your question, Gino, is I'm at church. It's my father's funeral service, and we're at the Catholic Church, Corpus Christi, which is on the corner. And one thing my mother insisted on, which she did do, and this, again, instilling patterns, is every Sunday you go to church. So I'm at the church service, and it's a massive crowd, and the priest said in his homily, I'm going to tell this story, and my hope is that only one of you hears it, at least one of you. And for some reason, I think we get to these points in our lives, like with my mentor at the time when I was 11, or with this, I said, he's talking to me. I don't know what he's going to say, but he's talking to me. And, there was really no hope if you really think about it. And so he said, listen, in life, you could choose to be the horse or the rider of the horse. But whatever you choose, life will become the other thing. I'm like, okay, I don't know where he's going with this. He said, so if you choose to become the horse, life becomes the rider, and life will take you wherever it wants you to go. And that's pretty cool. He says, but you can choose to become the rider, and then life becomes the horse, and you take it wherever you want it to go. And I said to myself, I am getting on that horse, baby. And I never looked back. It was a really, I think all of us have moments like that, but are we going to use those moments to have permanent change? And I think those two stories created permanent change in me.
Well, what's really cool, I think, Rick, is you had a lot of pain in your life, and it's either pain or you're moving away from that pain. That's what it looked like from your life. And most of us don't have enough pain to do that. We're just comfortable enough to not be painful, and I just go through life. But to have that pain, and to at 13 years old to really realize that is just an amazing thing. Your father, you said he was not really that successful of an entrepreneur. What do you think he did wrong in his business, or as he was trying to feed the family, as you say?
It's funny that to see as a young kid honesty and dishonesty. He owned a car lot, and he sold. I mean, he he was desperate, so he would do anything to make cars worth more money, from turning back odometer readings to trying to change the year of a car when he could. And I watched him do this stuff, and it struck me as wrong at the time. And he would really do anything to put food on the table. So on the one hand, he was completely dedicated and loyal to creating money. On the other hand, I just watched him do a lot of things wrong, from how he treated employees to cutting corners.
And that obviously came into your being, and this is why you've created such a successful, I guess, company or life, correct?
Well, there's a lot of things and a lot of people, but one of the things I would say that's helped me the most is a focus on mentorship. I have always, probably because of the death of my dad, sought out mentors, and I could call 50 people my mentor. In fact, I don't know if I sent it to you, but I interviewed over 40 billionaires, and one of my mentors recently passed away, T. Boone Pickens. But I sought these people out because what I found is all of them went through serious pain in their life. And I think it's the reaction to pain that causes a lot of success. If you have this is a problem for all of us, right? The entrepreneur's dilemma. We create some cash, our family, our children particularly, grow up, you know, comfortable, right? And what's our job as parents? If Johnny falls down, no, make sure we put a pillow under his ass. We don't want his ass to touch the ground. And our job is to put pillows under our kids' asses, and we're destroying their ability to self-generate in some regard. So I lost why I started that, but the reality is pain does cause success, which you pointed out.
So what you do to that is you get your kids. I have my son. He got a busboy job, and he used to work at the restaurant with grandma. So he'd go in with the suit and jacket and everything. He looked really good. I said, "You're gonna get a busboy job in the middle of summer down here in St. Augustine." He comes home, his shirt's dirty, he smells. He's like, "I took out the garbage." I'm like, good. He goes, I said, do you like the job? He goes, no. I'm making, now he talks about Jake, he talks about gross and net, which is just amazing. I'm making $10 an hour gross, but I'm only taking home $9 an hour. I'm like, do you see that? Then he goes and he's great with the guitar. So we pay him $30 an hour to teach his siblings music. So he's going 3-to-1 ratio. I can sit home in air conditioning and learn how to play the guitar for $30 an hour and teach my kids, or I can go work at the restaurant 1 day a week. So it's pain, like
and that's $30 to the house. That's net.
That's right, exactly, dude. And it's funny when you start talking gross and net to young kids and let them understand the whole ramification of economics and supply and demand, and seeing about taxes and about how much you're keeping, not how much you're making. It's an amazing thing, and that pain really, I love that. I love that he comes home tired. That's just a great thing, dude. So.
Here's what we did. And it's not working, to be honest, and we're trying to figure out how to make it work. But we decided to buy rental property down the street from our house. It's about half a mile away. And I said to my oldest son, Luke, Luciano is his real name. He goes by Luke. I said, Luke, when he was 10, he's about to be 12. This is your house. You have no equity. You can earn equity by helping, clean the house, clean the windows, turn the tenants and all that. And we've showed him the financials and everything else, and he's just not interested. So I don't know how to make the kid interested. But I think for the parents that have kids that are interested, buy a rental house, have them be able to earn equity in it. And we've had this for almost 2 years now. It's a little house. The rent's about $2,000 a month, but it's cool. Now, what's interesting is his younger brother, who's 9. He's very interested. So I've been explaining it to him. So I think little simple things like that are just ideas to get your kids interested in business. You can start right now.
He may be too young, because my son is 17. So he started really getting into it when he was 15 years old. And now that, with Jake and Gino, he's going to be working with the company and all, but they may be a little young. Just keep him involved, let him keep going on, let him see the financials and let him see it. And then the best thing is when he starts putting his own money in. So if he's got any money from confirmations or from saving money, and they put money in the deals. Now my son's talking about refi and rolling. He's talking about what are the draws this month. I'm like, wow, this is just like, I'm hitting nirvana at 17. What were draws? Draws for me was like my clothes, where I put in when I was 17 years old. So, Rick, you're in the book. You talk about 3 primary operating principles. Can we go over those 3? You said simplicity, probability, and leverage.
Absolutely. This is something I talk about every day in my life. And you think about this from a personal perspective or a business perspective. So the first thing is, as you think about your life, how can you make things as simple as possible? And an operating value that my wife and I have in our marriage and in my business is simplicity. And how that plays out is, for example, from the first date I ever went on with my wife was on a Monday night at 7:30. And we met a little bit more than 15 years ago. And every Monday at 7:30, we go out to dinner. We did last night. We're doing this on a Tuesday morning. It's right here on the family place net that mom and dad go to dinner Monday night. So why is that simple? Babysitter knows, neighbors know, employees know, wife knows, restaurant knows. It just makes things simple. Most couples are like, hey, you want to go? No, I don't have a babysitter. Oh, what about Saturday? Oh, what about it? And you're back and forth. So simplicity in all regards in business. When you think about how a company like Apple went from 2 guys without business knowledge to the largest market cap company in the world, they have kept things simple in their business strategy. But what do most entrepreneurs do? They complexify. The second word is probability. We think about this every single day. Every decision that you guys make, that everybody listening makes, that I make, should be put through the probability operating principle. And it's a lens, if you think about it that way. Put it through that lens. Is this decision going to increase the probability that I hit the stated outcome? And so an example of that, there's 1,000 examples, but what most companies do is they do the opposite. They do low probability things. But let's just do a family example so you get it. I know, and I know Jake and Gino, you know this. You want to raise 18-year-olds that are independent, entrepreneurial, maybe God-fearing, but motivated. And the last word is, for me, we want them to have their own business. So what does that mean? I'm going to make decisions that increase the probability that they do that. So we're never going to do travel sports, because I've seen families get decimated with travel sports. It just doesn't work for creating entrepreneurial kids. It's good for creating prima donnas that their coach ties their shoes for them and all that, but it's not good for creating entrepreneurs. So what do? We've had our kids in discipline oriented things. Like my son's about to get his black belt, 8.5 years in karate. All 4 kids do karate and jujitsu. Um, all 4 kids have basically a long list of things that they have to do in a week, and they check it on their own. They fill a form out, they turn it in to get paid, and then that money goes into the bank that they can see, where they each of the 4 kids has 4 accounts: saving, investing, donating, and spending. And so it gets their brains thinking about that's going to increase the probability that we create that 18-year-old. On the business front, when you think about business strategy, what's going to increase the probability that you build your company? Well, you better be damn clear about 3 things that most companies aren't clear about. What business are we in? Exactly. One line. We're in the business of, if you're Amazon at the beginning, selling books. How do we deliver our product or service? We use fourth-rate postal if you're Amazon, 25 years ago. And who is our ideal customer? In Amazon's case, it was somebody that had an internet connection. They didn't violate that business strategy. And because they didn't, because it was permanent, using that word again, they created a moat around their business. So I believe in high probability decisions like that, having a crystal clear business strategy. And then the last word is leverage. How do you leverage existing infrastructure? How do you leverage existing relationships, existing technology? What most companies do is they get far afoot from what they're already doing, and they do low leverage things. There's a company in Dallas, I know them pretty well. They opened up a restaurant, and it wasn't doing that well, but it had really high ratings. So it was a fast casual thing. So they came up with the idea based on probability that they knew, we're going to open up another exactly the same restaurant a quarter mile away. Now, most people would think that's crazy. But what happened was both restaurants moved up because they knew they had a good product and they knew they had good reviews. And then they opened up a third one about a half a mile away. So it was like a triangle. The interesting thing about that is most people would say, well, open it up in the next town or the next state. They just sold this 3-restaurant concept for $30 million cash because it crossed 20 million in revenue, and the buyer could see. But that's a high probability decision.
Mm-hmm.
And most of us do this, and this is my last example, and I want to hear questions. Their assistant leaves, so they hire their, out of work drunk sister-in-law to take over that position. Low probability. So we make low probability decisions. So first thing is, know the objective. If the objective is to sell your business in 5 years, make decisions that increase that probability. Or you could use this as an example for anything. So simplicity, probability, and leverage. I actually wrote them down because I talk about it every day. Drives my kids and my wife nuts. But I think it's a formula for living both business, in your business and in your personal life.
And as far as simplicity goes, I'm assuming you have no pets, correct?
No pets, 0
So,
pets. So it
I
makes me a
mean,
bad person, probably.
makes us a bad person, because I always tell my wife, my kids are always bothering me for pets. And I'm like, and I mentioned, no, Mr. Sapio has no pets. We got to keep it simple because we like to go on vacation. We don't want to bore the pet. We want to go. So it means a lot for us, that just to keep things simple.
Yeah,
What,
well, it also goes to, and I get in these debates all the time. Everybody's going to have their own values. I wrote a book about this. It's called Who's in Your Room? How, the quality of your life depends on the people and projects in your life. You need to get crystal clear on your decision-making matrix, your values, your purpose. So for us, no pets. We have one house. A lot of people I know, they have multiple houses, multiple cars, multiple
yes.
planes, multiple properties. We have one house. I have one car. I live in a very close to the airport because I travel sometimes frequently. Just no commute. But what we say internally here is conscious action. People do a lot of things unconsciously, but if you but if you take conscious action, like where am I going to live? Well, I really like the country. Okay, so you're going to live an hour and a half out of town. You're going to sit in traffic for an hour and a half, 2 hours every day. That's not conscious. Do that when you retire. So anyway, go ahead, Gino. You had a question.
Very important, value-based decision making. Jim Shields mentioned that to me, a good friend of ours, and he says, Rick lives by that. And when we made a mistake about 6 months ago in entering a partnership, it wasn't value-based decision making. So I think that's truly important. I know Jake wants me to ask this question. The benefits of a holding company. You had mentioned that in your previous interview, and Jake was, I think he fell in love with the process. I see him keep shaking his head during the interview. So the holding company, what are the benefits of it?
So this is a really interesting story. When I worked on Wall Street in my 20s, before he was known by anybody, Warren Buffett was a client, and he didn't become famous until 1992, I think, or 1991 when he took over Solomon. But I didn't know what a holding company was, and I told him I want to start a business, and he said, "Start a holding company." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because if you have a holding company, you could do a lot of stuff underneath, and if they don't work out, they just move on, but you don't hurt the golden goose." What most people do is they, you know, invest in their own company, and if it doesn't work out now, they have to start over again. So in March of 1994, I started my holding company. It's the only private company I owned, and so everything that we've done has been underneath that holding company. So when it comes tax time, I'm an employee of this entity, so my taxes are really easy. Most people are chasing down K1s and all kinds of stuff. So whenever we make an investment, it's from a holding entity, and that holding company, it pays me well, and we've got all our benefits and our 401k and all that stuff in there. So a lot of people want to again go back and complexify their business life. I think this is the simplest way to do it. It's kind of hard to get from here to here unless you started here, but I've influenced a lot of people over the years to make that transition. And for me, it's simplicity, probability, and leverage, because we have had a lot of failures. We've made over 100 investments the last 26 years, and we've had a lot of failures, but the holding company stays intact, and we just move on with life.
So Rick, over those last 20 something years, how has your investment strategy changed as markets change and things change? How has it changed?
So more recently, and we've been very influenced by a philosophy called profit from the core, which goes back to simplicity, probability, and leverage. Everything you do should be basically turning that core business, and Jim Collins refers to this as the
Flywheel?
hedgehog. The
Oh,
what?
hedgehog. Oh, I was
Yeah.
thinking you're going to say the flywheel.
Yeah, flywheel or hedgehog
Yeah.
principle, either one. So we have experimented with a lot of different things, from real estate to IP to private equity to buying distressed companies. But at the end of the day, what we've realized is the thing we're really good at is long-term relationships and long-term investments. Like if we're doing business with somebody, it has to be someone that has demonstrated in their life that they're long-term oriented, because we live in a world that's so short term. And what happens, and you guys see this, I know you do, I'm losing my voice. Transactions are very hard today because of something called electronic sludge. Do you remember 20 years ago, you met someone, you shook their hand, they wrote a check the next day, and you're in business? Now, all these emails are flying around, and text messages, and lawyers get involved, and accountants get involved, and questions, and they're Googling, and blah, blah. It's electronic sludge, so it's slowing everything down. So the way to cut through that sludge is only do things that are add simplicity, probability, and leverage, but somehow leverage your core hedgehog or flywheel or business. And for us, I know it sounds murky, but it isn't for us. Long-term oriented businesses, long-term oriented investments, long-term oriented people.
So for everyone out there doing single family homes, there's another reason why you don't want to buy 20 homes a year. You'd rather buy an apartment complex with 20 units. It's one transaction and it's a lot simpler. Would you agree with that, Rick?
Fix and flip.
Yeah.
100%. And there's also a ton of tax benefits to doing that I don't know. You guys know better than me, but the difference between an apartment complex and the structure that you use to buy it, you can get more benefit than buying
Mm-hmm.
single family homes.
Mm-hmm. One question that I know that Jake would kill me if I didn't ask. It's important to us as entrepreneurs because we think people,
Wait,
product.
Gino, let me cut you off. Does Jake not talk? What are you going to ask Jake? You ask the question Jake's going to ask. Then I want Jake to ask a question he wants to
Now
ask.
there's
Go ahead, Gino.
see this is the probability in the structure, Rick, because Gino asked the first half and I asked the second half, so I'm just waiting for my
Okay.
turn.
Go ahead,
So
Gino. I got
there's a
you.
method to our madness.
And that's the
Gotcha.
thing.
All
I
right.
can read his mind because I know that I can know
All
what
right.
Jake loves to ask, but I love to ask him myself. And I think, how do you compensate employees? I think, people, product, promotion, and price is what we talked about in the last couple of weeks. And that's the core of what your business is. If one of those four is not working, then you're not going to have a successful company or a successful venture. How do you compensate employees? How do you keep them motivated? How do you give somebody a part of your business of what you're running and get them compensated?
Well, there's an ideal way to pay, I believe, and there's many variations to this. But I believe that oftentimes when you look at businesses and you have unmotivated people, it's generally not a motivation problem with your people; it's a compensation problem. And so what we've been saying for about 20 years now is you got to pay people 5 ways. This is in our structure. You got to give them a base living salary wage. You want them to be committed to working for you. You don't want them to go home and talk to their spouse about trying to find another job because they don't have base pay. So I don't like paying people by the hour or anything like that. I like everyone being on a salary. The second thing is everybody needs their own incentive. So the simple way to do this is each employee, so you got a base pay and then you have incentive pay based on them achieving their 5 objectives each quarter. And then I believe in company-wide bonuses. That's the third way to pay people. So it goes like this. If we achieve these 5 objectives for the quarter as a company, everybody gets $1,000 bonus and we all go to dinner or we all go on a cruise or whatever. So it gets everybody pulling the chariot in the same direction, everybody helping. So living wage based pay, individual bonuses based on their individual accomplishments, company-wide bonus. The fourth thing is benefits. We've always used a PEO from day one. We pay IBM like benefits. I think you get a higher quality person, at least for our culture. And so we always pay benefits with 401k and medical and matching and all that. And then the last thing is a long-term bonus of some kind. We use stock options. A friend of mine uses, he hires people. He says, on your 10-year anniversary, I'm sending you on a cruise around the world for 3 weeks. And so you get so much out of having that in place, because I remember this story, this is years ago now. I met Sherry and I go, Sherry, how you doing? And she goes, 7 more years. I said, 7 more years for what? She goes, the cruise. And he would get longevity out of people because you really want longevity from good people. And he told me one day, he confided, he said, it's really weird. I only pay $6,000 for the cruise, but I get 10 years of loyalty from people. I'm sure the cruise is more expensive now, but the point is, what we've determined in our culture here is you got to pay people 5 ways. So now let's think about executives. We incent executives with profit sharing and options on top of that. So, ownership in the company.
Mm-hmm. Love that. Before we get into the short answer questions, how have you built your teams and what advice do you have for team building?
We have evolved to, we're very passive investors now. And so when we invest into a company, we generally invest in the leader, and it's up to the leader to build their team. So I don't have advice for you there on team building, other than I believe it's a lot easier and adds simplicity, probability, and leverage when the company has a very clear purpose statement and value set. And so you want to hire, most people hire for skills. I think that's important, but I think a culture fit is better. And one of the things we decided to do, because we had a hard time finding companies to invest in with our funds. So I created Business Finishing School, and it's basically a blueprint. There's 48 modules. If you go through all 48 modules one by one, you build the foundation and the mindset to create a company that's saleable, which we think is the objective. You don't have to sell it, but it has to be saleable because it's easier to run if it's saleable. And we think by laying out this groundwork and putting these building blocks in place, you radically increase simplicity, probability, and leverage. And we've had so many people go through the program the last 10 years and say, I now have time to spend with my wife and kids. I'm making more money. I have less stress. I have more simplicity. So we did that because we were trying to find investments. And the funny thing is we've had about, I don't know, something like 2,000 people through. And we've only invested in one company so far, but we're going to keep trying.
All right, gang, let's take a quick time out to hear from our sponsor. Gino, I know a lot of our listeners are wanting to take their multifamily investing business to the next level. I know that you've been hard at work helping Jake and Gino students do just that using our framework. Can you explain to the listeners how they can get our help?
Guys, we've been hard at work growing our community of like-minded investors, and the results of our members has been nothing short of incredible. We're looking to grow this amazing group. What we're looking for is those who want to follow our proprietary framework that we've created. Buy right, manage right, and finance right. Leverage our connections, education, and mentorship as ways to take your business to the next level.
So if you're interested in finding out more about how you can become a part of our amazing community, apply to work with us at jakeandgino.com/apply. All right, and we are back. Rick, what is your best habit for success?
I get up early. I'm in the 5 a.m. club, and we're doing this at 8 a.m. Dallas time. And my alarm went off at 4:45. I went to the gym to meet my trainer. I've had the same trainer for 11 years. And to add simplicity, probability, and leverage to that is do this if you want to work out and get in shape. Is we do 30 sets in 30 minutes. So I'm in the gym. He's going, pushing me like a horse, 30 sets in 30 minutes, and I'm done. And it goes by very quickly. So that's simplicity, probability, and leverage. So that's my best habit. I get up, I get those endorphins going. I don't know even know if that's the right word, but I feel really
feel
good.
goods. Gets the feel good cranked up at 5 a.m. How have you developed your mindset over the years?
I use mentors a lot. I have a huge network of people that I rely on, and whenever I'm feeling, uncertain, I'll go to a mentor. I also try not to repeat mistakes. Yeah, it's funny. People rarely make the same mistake twice. It's usually like 40 or 50 times. So stop that. Stop making the same mistake. So I try not to make the same mistakes over and over again. I think that builds confidence.
Really important for us is scaling our business at this point. We're 5 years into really running it. And we found that time and time again, we always have to come back to systems and scale. Do you have a tip for scaling a business for the folks out there?
I think you have to be crystal clear on your business strategy. I mentioned it before. By the way, nobody talks about this, permanence. If you take the time when you start your business to create a permanent strategy, just think about Southwest Airlines. You may not know this, but there was a 30-year stretch of time that Southwest Airlines was the best performing stock on the stock exchange. All companies, think about that. Why? They built that little strategy on the back of a napkin. We're just doing direct short haul flights using one type of plane with no assigned seating. And we're going to ride this pony as far as it goes, and we're not going to deviate. How did that happen? Because they took 4 years to solidify the strategy and discuss it. It's no different in a marriage. What do we want to build? How long do we want that to be in place? So you've got to sit down. I would much rather invest in an entrepreneur who took 3 or 4 years to think through every scenario and then start than someone who, this lean startup movement is all about iterate. Yes, that could work maybe, but I'd rather have instilled in a business permanence and, well, there's another word we use, magnanimity. Let me talk about magnanimity later. So did that answer the question?
Yeah, no, that's good. What are you passionate about? What project are you passionate about right now?
The thing I'm most passionate about now is trying to change the mindset of humanity. I know it sounds like a big thing, but we're so short-term oriented. And I've got 3 books coming out over the next year. 2 of them are already written. And it's all about having a 100-year mindset. And so the long-term thinking, if you think about this, if you have a 100-year mindset in your business, it's going to inform what you do today. To use a real world example, if I know that I want to live 100 more years, it's going to inform what I put in my mouth this second. So crystal clear clarity on where you're going long term informs what you do right now. So as an example, you know, if you sat down, both of you, with your spouse, and you said, honey, I just wrote this out, this little paragraph. It's 50 years from now, you know, we're sipping coffee. We're in a mountain lodge in Colorado. It's snowing outside. Our great grandchildren are running around. There's a fire going on behind us. You create a crystal clear image of some event 50 years into the future. Then when you have a fight, you're not running to divorce court, because that long-term image protects your time and your decision making. And so for me, we've got these books coming out. One is on investing, 100-year investment strategy. The other one is having a 100-year business, and the other one is having a 100-year mindset. And I think that a long-term view on things protects our short term, because I'm looking at our kids, and they have, it's true now, I think it's scientifically proven, guys, that children have a shorter attention span than a fruit fly.
Than a goldfish.
Than a goldfish. There you go.
Rick, I don't even think you realize this, but you are built for multifamily investing, because Gino and I talk about the long view all the time. We talk about the reason we've been successful is because we commit, we've stayed in our lane, and it really is. It's a leveraged long-term investment. Everything, and it's predictable. You know, and going back to everything you said today, man, you are built for this.
I talk about the farmer, and you know, my father came from Italy. He was a farmer. You got to plant the seed, then you got to pray to God that you got to water it. You get no droughts, you get no hail, and then maybe in 6 months you have food on the table. And that's what it is with multifamily. You're buying an asset that's undervalued, that has some type of value add component to it. You hope that you can raise the rents. You hope that the market cycle is okay. You hope that that bridge debt that you get will last, and rates are okay. And then you're taking all that risk. You're implementing your strategy, and then it works. It's sort of the same thing. I think farmers are such entrepreneurs, and I think multifamily is the same way. And what you touched upon with the short-term instant gratification, it's all about the dopamine hit. Nowadays with cell phones, you know, be careful with your kids and the cell phones, those likes and all that. It's that short-term dopamine hitting your brain and saying, that's why people love transactions. That electronic sludge you're talking about, they love doing transactions, making 10 grand here, 15 grand there. That's short-term gain. That's paying the bills instead of growing that equity, which is long-term and deferring it. So to me, I think that's one of the reasons why Jake and I have been successful the last 3 or 4 years. We've refinanced a lot of money. We haven't taken vacations. We haven't bought cars. We've reinvested all that into the business. And if people can take the long view of that, I think it'd make them a lot more successful. And it doesn't have to take a long time. We've only been doing this for 6 or 7 years, Jake and I, but we've been disciplined enough that we know what our goals are, and that we know that we need to reinvest in our businesses, and we know what the long-term outlook is. So everything you said resonates completely with me.
I love it. So let's have a follow-up conversation about multifamily. It's an area that I don't have a lot of experience in. I mentioned to you that we did invest a lot of money in one project, which has done well.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, when your kids want a cell phone, this is mine. It still works, from 2005.
He's Gino. He's a hustler. I bet he's getting batteries for that thing on Amazon right now.
If you want to save 4 hours a day, get one of these bad boys.
It's funny because we have the struggle. I mean, we homeschool our kids. So the 14-year-old right now doesn't have service. So I've got to get her service, because now I'm dropping her off and doing certain things. But it's a tough thing, because I don't want them to have it. Then the 11-year-old says life isn't fair. When am I going to get mine? And I just try to push it off as much as possible. And I just, you know, they're not on social media, which is a good thing to communicate. But it's a difficult thing. Try to keep your kids limited on it, because it's really not good for them.
Oh, for the folks not on YouTube, Rick just held up a 1973 classic LG flip phone clamshell deluxe edition. So
2005.
Yeah, and it's still it's not a color screen yet, and it doesn't have a camera, but it's yeah.
Damn, I got to get one just for my kid, just to embarrass them, just to whip it out and embarrass them and go, Dad, really? Put that thing away. That's a great, Jake, go on Amazon, buy one when we get off the show, bro.
You know, I know we're laughing about this, but there's I just read in Psychological, whatever that magazine is, Psychology Today, I believe, it said the most destructive force in the world right now is this force that's creating short-term, what do you call it, switching in your brain. And there's a great book written by a guy named Calvin, I forget his last name, called Deep Work. That deep
Yes.
work,
Heard of
it's
that.
missing from society. Like, and this psychological magazine article said that our job is, as parents, to teach our kids to stay focused on one task at a time. And we do that by keeping electronics out of their hands. So we don't have any electronics in our house yet. In fact, we don't even have a connected TV. And I'm not like a freak like that. I'm just looking at the research and saying, let my kids be kids.
Mm-hmm.
So they play, and their upbringing is not much different than mine was. So a lot of you listening probably think I'm a bad parent, but our kids are thriving.
That's the hard work, though. I don't think you're a bad parent. I think you're doing the hard work, which a lot of people are unwilling to do because it's easy to throw a tablet in front of your kid and say, go zone out in the corner. I got stuff to do. So,
Or it's also societal pressure too. I mean,
Yeah.
like for us, I mean, like we get it from a lot of people, and they're like, well, your kids don't have a phone yet. And we're just like, and you have to stick up to your own, what you think is right for your children, and they'll adapt. They don't need it until they need it. You'll know when they need it. So it's important. Jake,
nobody needs it.
any final questions?
I
Jake?
got like a few more questions here for
Ask
me.
your people. I just want to say one thing. If you come to my house for dinner, and Jim's been there, we have a big sign in two places. It says, "No cell phone use, please." And it's got a picture of a cell phone. And we talk about stuff that's on here. And we talk about entrepreneurship and making the world a better place. And we read, I've got a lot of books near the dinner table on successful people. And I don't know, it's an experiment, but we'll see how it turns out.
Two more questions for you. Number one, any book recommendations that you want to make that, the book that's made a big impact on your life you want to share with the audience?
So it's it's had a massive impact on my life, and I've read it probably 4 times, but the 2 books by Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged, and The
My
Fountain
guy,
Man.
I knew this. Oh, it's coming here. I got all 3 of them up on the shelf right now. I'd pick it up and go, man.
Look how excited he's getting. He's getting excited.
Well,
like
hold on.
kid.
So here's the thing. We have in our family of companies, we have Rand Property Management, we have Rand Partners, and we have Rand Capital. Okay.
And why don't you tell them some of the LLCs?
We have Rand Cares as well. L. Hammond Investments, J. Galt Investments, F. Danconia Investments.
That's awesome.
Oh man, I'm giving you a virtual hug right now. I just found my guy.
So here's the thing, though, and I counterbalance that. In my later years, I do a lot of meditation, and I'm a very spiritual person. So there's this dance between what Ayn Rand stands for, which I've read every word she's ever printed over the years, and probably before I was 30. And then there's the spiritual component. And the thing I think a lot of people miss is the most successful people that I meet have this trust that everything's going to be okay, that God or the universe, or however you want to say it, universal intelligence will take care of you. And when you trust that everything's going to be okay, and you combine that with this drive that Ayn Rand talks about, that's where nirvana happens. And so the other word I said I was going to mention is magnanimity.
I can't
Magnanimity. Yeah, it's an interesting word, and I pick a
twister.
word. What's that? Yeah,
tongue twister.
So I pick a word every year. I'm looking to my left. I have a massive board to my left with the word on it. So my word for 2019 is magnanimity. What is it? This is where most of us are. We're operating here, and this is where God wants us to be, or where our potential is, and it gets filled with magnanimity. And how do you fill it with magnanimity? You cut out the toxic behavior. You cut out the toxic relationships. You get rid of the stuff holding you back. You clear the decks, and you focus on your purpose and your values, and the important decisions you need to make. So magnanimity to me is living at full potential. And so it's really challenging for me to look in the mirror in the morning and say, am I being magnanimous today? So,
Gino, I'm going to try this right now. Magnanimity. I think I got on the first one, right?
Yes,
magnanimity. All right, we're gonna fill that cup up. Last question, and thank you so much for being here today. What's the best way for folks to get a hold of you and learn more about your company?
Well, right now I want to promote businessfinishingschool.com, because it's helped so many people to do exactly what we're just talking about here, which is create simplicity, probability, and leverage, give you a blueprint to follow. We have companies from 0 to 600 million in revenue that have been through the program. I'd love to coach and mentor you through that program. So we have events twice a year, and we have an online program. So go to businessfinishingschool.com. and sign up. That's that's really the best thing. If you want to learn about values-based decision making, get Who's in Your Room. It came out about 10 months ago, and it's been a bestseller. I know everybody says that, but it literally is a bestseller. And I did that with a guy named Ivan Meisner, who owns or started BNI. They went from 0 to 250,000
It's
paying
crazy.
customers.
I know that. And they're making serious money. It's a continuity, baby. It's continuity every month, which is awesome.
And our
So
third author is Stuart Emery. Funny thing about this is Simplicity, Probability, and Leverage. I went to those two guys and said, I've got an idea for a book. Will you do it? And so I gave them values-based decision making, and they ran with it. And now we got a published book. So pretty cool.
we got Business Finishing School. We got Who's in Your Room. And we got a big announcement because Rick is going to be speaking at Multifamily Mastery 3 this year in Orlando. So really excited about that. So got some good things in the hopper here, Gino.
Orlando? I thought it was in Vegas. I bought my ticket to Vegas. That's where I'm
It doesn't align with your values. It was meant for Vegas, and we were like, Rick's more of an Orlando guy. I don't know if Vegas and the Sin City aligns with his values there. So we had to take a shift.
I like that. Just to wrap up the show, we could probably honestly speak 2 to 3 hours longer and continue to ask questions. I would tell everybody to go look Rick up. I love everything. It's just simple, right? The 3 primary operating principles: simplicity, how you compensate employees. We didn't talk about conscious action. It's all there. And I think we try to complicate things. And I think his parenting, the way he parents his children, the way he runs his companies, he's a great role model. So I would go look that company up, his website, businessfinishingschool.com. I've written it down because I've had a lot of students ask me, how do you get into business and how do you create it? So I'm going to share that with the Jake and Gino community. And I think everyone out there who wants to start a business, and not a job, like a real business, not like the Gino's Trattoria where you're running around and you're not creating a business. You're not creating something that's sellable, that's taking you out of it. Get your ego out of it. You want to be able to create a business that can thrive without you, and you can be the leader. And I wish I'd known that 10 years ago. I probably wouldn't be here. I'd probably have 15 restaurants, but that's okay. That wasn't the path that was meant for me, right?
You're on a better path, my friend.
It's supposed to be Jake and Gino. So any final words, Mr. Stenziano?
No, I just want to say, Rick, really appreciate your value and your insights. And I love the message of simplicity, and just really appreciate you spending the time with us this morning.
It was awesome. And do you have to be Italian to be on this program?
It's the only way you get in.
It's very rare.
You have to be a male too. So it's like a very, we're in a lot of trouble here. We're probably going to jail after this one. So.
All right. I had a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. You guys are salt of the earth, and I love what you stand for. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Rick.
Take care.